Start us off, Carter.
And ladies and gentlemen, we are here for the Super. Wait a second. This isn't Carter and Kevin Explains Football. It's Kevin Explains Wrestling. I'm Carter.
I'm Kevin, and we
And
duped ya.
oh, yeah.
We duped ya because it's the football boys.
Oh, I'm in my head to indicate I'm fired up for the American people today to bring the smack. Go. Pop my ear on that one. Ow.
That's better than your.
A lot of
Excuse
other
me.
things.
You're chugging a bunch of.
Oh, that almost killed me. I went to that. I had to seek medical attention.
Yeah, for outside of the football sphere of people on our conference slash Pro Bowl episode of Kevin and Carter Talk Football. Carter started it by chugging 3 ginger ales
Uh,
and
no, seltzers.
seltzers. And then, yeah, dude
Yeah,
exploded
that hurt.
internally.
I don't have a lot of bits for that. It just really hurt.
Yep. So we are here to talk about WrestleMania. Um, Specifically, what happened? What is WrestleMania? The lore ish behind it, all that fun jazz. Kind of giving you deeper, a little bit of a deeper cut into it. But first, let's talk about what is happening right now in wrestling, because shit's happening. So,
Yes, what has me?
some pretty big stuff has been happening. So, Women's Royal Rumble winner Bailey has challenged her now former tag team partner, stablemate, member of her faction, Damage Control, Io Sky, for the women's title, or one of the women's titles. They played it off that Io Sky, Asuka, and Kairi Sane have been doing this whole like Mean Girls this bit. They're all Japanese, so like one of the things Bailey said is like, "I know you've been talking behind my back. I can speak Japanese, you know." And then everyone's like, "Scandalous."
I was
Um,
going to say, you said former partners. Has this been a long-standing beef or a short-term beef?
that actually is, the beef has pretty much just. I guess it's been like kind of smoldering a little bit for a while because Io Sky won the women's Money in the Bank ladder match. So she got a contract for any title match at any time that she wants. And she used it, redeemed it, won, and it kind of was given off like a. It should have been Bailey vibes, but also she deserves it. And so, like, no one was mad that she won it because it's not like, oh, she deserved it over Bailey. It was just like she's like she won it, and then it's just like a little bit of tension in the group, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and then the other original member, Dakota Kai, got hurt, and she's been out for a while. She's gotten like a bunch of ankle injuries and leg injuries and stuff over the years, so it's just like things catching up to her.
Right.
And then they brought in friend, like legitimate real life friend from before they were in the WWE, Asuka, as like another member, and Kairi Sane, who returned
Oh, I
to
know
join
her.
them. Yeah.
Yeah, Asuka's one of the few I knew before we started this because I've seen like they. I know someone who was really hyping them up. That wasn't you,
Yeah.
believe it or not.
Really?
Yes, someone I follow in the game sphere is also into wrestling and was hyping them up as like, oh, this is the next fun, like this is the next cool kid on the block.
Yeah. No, they like they kind of yeah, they're awesome, and they did this whole like it's a very well built story
Right.
between them all. And once Asuka and Kerry joined the faction that Bailey started, Bailey kind of started getting put to the wayside. Io was the regular champion. Dakota was out, so she not like couldn't be considered a member, but she couldn't compete. and then Io Sky and not Io Sky, Kairi Sane and Asuka got the women's tag titles. They won those, and then it was kind of
Mm,
like a Bailey's left out kind of thing.
mm.
So it's got a decent amount of slow building for this. That like while it was pretty predictable, it it doesn't feel rushed or hurried.
Right.
Like
Question off of
yes,
that. I guess in terms of like the clans and stuff, because this is something we like I'm seeing a
yeah,
little bit of more and more. I guess my question is I know there are like tag teams. I know there are wrestling matches that are specifically teams that would behoove you to have like reliable partners.
yes,
But in general, what is the incentive for someone to join a team in a sport that's very, very much built around individual personalities? Like, I get why it makes lore sense in terms of entertainment value,
yes.
because it's like, ooh, gossip, yum. Um, if gossip was a tangible thing, I'd eat it. Um, but why, like, I guess, like, in the
Why go
logic of,
into
yeah,
factions and stuff?
wrestling,
Yeah,
yeah,
so that's kind of it's a little bit of like a camaraderie aspect, but also it's like a you watch your back, I'll watch your back, you watch my back kind of thing. It varies from group to group on what is like more about. Like for example, there was the New Day, which is one of the most popular tag factions of all time, still active. When they formed around 10ish years ago now, they weren't the fun loving, pancake flinging, cereal owning guys that they are currently. It was like Kofi Kingston and Big E were kind of like they were doing like in between stints, for lack of a better description, where it was like Big E was his first debut on like the main roster and stuff. He was kind of a bodyguard esque role for one of the women's wrestlers and stuff. He was because he's like just a huge dude. Kofi was in between tag teams. He's been wrestling for quite some time, and he has he was in this role of like when he first started off, he had this whole Jamaican accent and bit and stuff like that. He was the like being known for being Jamaican, and then he just dropped the accent one day, and they ironically called him out, and it's like it was actually Triple H in the middle of like they were cutting a promo for Survivor Series, and it's like Kofi was like speaking normally, and Triple H is like, "Hey, what happened to your accent?" Um, anyway, that's just fun Kofi Kingston lore.
huh,
They were kind of in like Kofi was kind of like after his like initial stint, he was kind of in this waves of tagging with this person, and going through things. And then Xavier Woods, he was like kind of the up and coming guy, and they had this whole segment of like we need to watch each other's backs, we need to help each other out, um, and that's kind of how they became the New Day. And it started off with them being a little bit more serious, a little bit more mean, but then it was just like they were legitimate friends. They're all kind of goofy dudes, so they just embraced the
mm,
goofiness and let them be silly. So it's like kind of like
yeah,
that. There's been like if you're not with us, you're against us kind of things. There's
right,
been
right.
we are like the Undertaker in the '90s had a it was called the Ministry of Darkness, and it was basically a
I've
cult
heard of that one.
cult kind of thing where people were his followers. So it's like there's a lot of reasons for it, but like the biggest one kind of is like a you watch my back, I'll watch yours. We'll help each other out if needed. And typically, a faction. So, a faction is a group that has at least three people.
Mhm.
Um, Typically, nowadays, it's a little bit closer to four, which is nice, in my opinion. And it's
Right.
like you have the guy going for whatever the solos title is, and then the tag team guys. It's like, so these guys are going to be competing in tag team matches representing you guys. And
Right.
then,
There's an understanding that like one guy's the face, like he gets
yeah,
to do the one-on-one, and the other guys are there for like to, support.
yeah. And sometimes it
And I assume that creates
rotates.
tension when it goes wrong.
Yeah, there's almost always there's some form of tension. It's surprising that like the New Day hasn't had any crazy tension. Um, they've had fun bits with each other, but they've never actually gotten into like fights with each other, which is nice. Because a lot of the
Right.
time, especially because it was very big in the 90s and early 2000s, and then when the WWE transferred into its more PG era, which was like late 2000s to about 2015 or something, 2016, when it like kind of revolved into the more modern ways.
Right, right.
It was like that era. It was like there's like little to no factions, and factions kind of went in and out like a revolving door, where you were lucky if your faction stayed together a year and before somebody turned on somebody and something happened. It felt very rushed. Nowadays, while there is like members getting added, members getting kicked out, like good old R Truth. Um, it's a shame that he has to kick out JD McDonough out of Judgment Day. It's like he it's less of a revolving door because the faction still stands and they've been together
Right.
for quite some time.
Yeah, that makes
Anyway, another big thing that happened was we want Cody. So we talked about the women's Royal Rumble winner. Now for the men's. So last Monday, or I guess 2 Mondays ago now, the Monday right after WrestleMania, it was like it was kind of implied like he might be he's pointed at Roman and stuff. It's seeming like Roman Reigns is his thing. They didn't really focus him too much on that Monday. Then the
sense.
following Friday is when things started to get a little bit insane.
Go
Um,
on.
so Roman Reigns is in the ring doing his thing. Cody comes out and starts talking and like kind of like a role of like listen, you're all this talk. I lost to you last year, blah blah blah. But I've been consulting a lot of people about it. And he's like, a lot of people, and some people that know you quite well. And then he pauses for the dramatic effect, and then The Rock shows up.
What?
Yeah, Dwayne The Rock Johnson shows up because he is so The Rock's grandfather and Roman Reigns' I believe also grandfather were blood brothers. So they were
Right.
raised pretty much, I mean, together ish, despite the age difference. Um, and like they were raised as family. So The
Mm.
Rock comes out, him and Cody hug, and then Cody steps to the side and like first off they said something in between each other that wasn't picked up by microphones. And then Cody steps to the side and The Rock stares down Roman Reigns, kind of implying Rock versus Roman for WrestleMania. Nothing was outright said,
Oh, that would be wild.
but it was kind of like that, which it was met with so much hate.
Really?
Yes, if because they spent all year building up this Cody versus Roman 2. They were like they not almost nonstop talking about it. Cody kept mentioning his story. He's got to finish the story,
Mm.
and it seemed like he took his title like he was given up his first choice for title match to The Rock, and it was like it's like Cody's one of the hottest guys of the group right now
Mm.
of the WWE, and they're kind of putting him off to the wayside. And it's just like, interesting. And people were super unhappy about that. Immediately after SmackDown, there was immediate online backlash. People people were just freaking out. It got so bad to a point where The Rock's daughter was getting like death threats on Twitter about it.
Jesus
Yeah,
Christ.
which first off, taking things way too far. Like it's an act. But it was hated. And then over the weekend, a lot of people were like started like hashtagging things. We want Cody and stuff, commenting on all WWE's posts. We want Cody,
Feel bad
and
for the like social media post people don't decide these things, people. Lay
yeah,
off.
no, it's like whatever. But and like people were talking about reasons. It's like it's because Rock is one of the chairmen of the overarching company. They want him in, and it's just like he's had a couple of bummer of movies recently, Shazam, Black Adam. Um,
Right.
so he's losing that crowd, and he with his XFL stuff, he's losing the NFL stuff. So it's like they need him. They need him hot again.
Really is this business we call show. You know, he
Mm-hmm.
was literally the most bankable star in the world, literally like what, 3, 4 years ago?
Yeah,
And now they're doing a live action Moana and Moana 2.
yeah, and so it was like that, and it's like people are like he strong armed his way into this. He forced his way into this, and then Monday rolls around. It's Monday Night Raw. Cody Rhodes is given an opportunity to speak about it and talk with Seth Rollins, the other champion that he could have challenged. And Cody started off with his signature, so what do you guys want to talk about? And Seth interrupts him, starts talking about how he's going to be like a better match. Cody might Cody might think he needs the Raw or Roman, but Seth needed Cody because last year, no, 2 years ago, I apologize, when Cody first returned to the WWE, his initial return match was against Seth at WrestleMania. And then they had two more absolute bangers of matches at the following pay per views, where one of them, Cody accidentally tore one of his pecs before, like working out beforehand, and he still wrestled with it like torn. His arm and like pec were just grossly red and rust colored, and he wrestled in a Hell in a Cell match like that.
Good Lord.
Yeah,
That's
which
impressive. Well, it's not impressive, it's horrifying, but
it's
it is
horrifying.
impressive on a physical aspect.
Yeah, and it's like it was like impressive, and like don't get me wrong, these two put on absolute bangers of matches over the years. So it's like it's still a best versus the best thing. And then
Right.
your real American Scotsman Drew McIntyre shows up before Cody gets a word
Greatest American who's ever lived.
in. Yeah.
And
And
again, it's a fucking metaphor for how immigrants help shape this nation, you know?
yeah.
Um, I mean,
Um
that's the thing. Like, The Rock is like still a cool, like, he's still a showman. He's still
yeah.
like got pizzazz. People still like him. It's just he hasn't been in movies they like lately.
Yeah. And yeah, they're talking to us, and then Drew McIntyre shows up, and he starts talking to like he interrupts Cody, and he's like, "Cody, I'm gonna like pulls literally like I'm gonna let you finish kind of thing,"
Mhm.
and he does. It's like he talks about how he needs to go against Seth, and he just seems to be like encouraging Cody to go after Roman, despite things with The Rock.
Mhm.
Which during this entire segment, there are Rocky sucks chants going on.
Oof.
The last time that happened was when The Rock was a huge bad guy in the late 90s, pretty much.
Right. I know he had a heel period.
Yeah, he did have a bad guy period, so it's justified. I posted a picture in the Discord of Cody's torn pec.
Oh God. All right. Against
Uh,
my better judgment, I'm pulling this up on my computer. Folks, I finally switched to just pure Discord on my phone, lest I get my computer on fire again.
yep. That's
Hashtag eventually I'll get a computer.
yeah. Get Carter computer 2024. And so with all the Rocky sucks chants,
Oh God in heaven.
yeah, it
Oh,
is not
that's
pretty.
red. That's not what it. Oh, buddy, no.
Yeah,
Jesus Christ.
he got surgery
Oh,
on it
like,
like the following day.
ugh, ugh. Oh
Um,
God.
but so there was that, and Drew McIntyre is talking about how he needs Seth. It's his time. Roman like encouraging Cody. It's like Cody, like Roman Reigns and his stupid family has screwed all of us over, which has been Drew McIntyre's kind of gimmick
Hmm.
for the last couple of months, where he hasn't been like in a super like competing for every single title kind of thing. He's not in like a huge feud with like he has beef with all the champions and stuff,
Hmm.
but he prioritizes things that if you are aligned with Roman Reigns in the bloodline, he will absolutely go against you first.
Right.
So
I dig that.
he's got this like weird independent anti-hero esque vibe. That's he's killing. He's doing great.
Hmm.
And so he's like outside, like he's in the ring encouraging Cody. Fans are eating that up. And then things happen where like the show goes on, matches happen, blah blah blah. But afterwards, like looking online, people are talking about some of the things with it and like the behind the scenes factors of like, oh, The Rock wants to turn Cody into the next Daniel Bryan, who was like a very like not quite super homegrown, but like he got his first like huge like popularity boost in the WWE, and the fans were behind him for like once he reached that phase of like being like the fans getting behind him, he never left that level of the fan engagement. They loved him so psychotically much that he had entire arenas doing his yes chant with him.
Oh, right.
And it's like, oh, The Rock wants to turn Cody into the next Daniel Bryan, who very much had a getting screwed over, like middle of his career kind of thing. And then other people are like, it's like TKO, the parent company, wants The Rock because he's a draw, and they want like they're gonna take more control over things, like for bigger events like WrestleMania, as opposed to like your day to day stuff like your weekly shows.
Hmm.
So it is very up in the air, and I'm excited to see where this all goes with the press conference. So typically, the last couple of years has been like a WrestleMania, like post Royal Rumble, before WrestleMania press conference. They have a couple like the champions show up because it's like a 50-50 shot if in between the Royal Rumble and WrestleMania the champions compete put their titles on the line for like the elimination chamber, which we'll talk about next week. Um, so that's tomorrow, and it's just going to be interesting to see what happens because Cody's
Right.
supposed to be there. Roman's supposed to be there. Seth's supposed to be there. The Rock is supposed to be there. That's four different ways that this can go, pretty much. Because
Right.
there's also the factor of this is now Triple H's WWE, not Vince McMahon's, who Triple H put on Sami Zayn versus Johnny Knoxville. He helped make that
Hmm.
happen. He had the holiday bits where Dominic Mysterio and Rhea Ripley, who is still everyone's favorite behind the scenes, Rhea Ripley, they would go to Rey Mysterio's house for Thanksgiving, and then Dominic would like be like asked to leave, and he was like, "I'm not leaving," and then kick Rey Mysterio's ass. He did it for 2 holidays. Got arrested on Christmas. Spent 24 hours in jail and was suddenly the toughest guy around. Good old prison Dom. But like
I
that,
guess a question. Well, sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, but that was like some of the stuff that is like they have kind of started going back to things all like the 80s and 90s where it isn't just the WWE is now what you see in front of a camera. It is now like they're using their social media platforms to help promote things and make things happen. Like they did the whole thing where Johnny Knoxville flew Sami Zayn's phone number over coastline. People posted about it
I
online, and they gave that phone to Sami Zayn to like have all those text messages, all those phone calls, and like literally would have him answer throughout the day and stay in
I mean, on
character.
one hand, that is doxing, but it is also very funny in
I
a
mean, it wasn't his
wrestling.
actual phone number.
Right,
It was a phone they probably just gave him to promote
right,
this.
right.
But it and then Sami Zayn retaliates by showing up the Jackass Forever premiere, the red carpet, and causes a kerfuffle. Like it's obviously staged and scripted, but it's getting to a point where it's transcending just your weekly shows and pay per views.
Right. And I guess that's a question I have. If we're having a question about who gets the shot at the title, who is the title fight? Like,
Yeah,
is it possible they break tradition and have a multi-way fight? Has that ever happened
that has
before?
happened before. They have had triple threats
Interesting.
for titles at WrestleMania and stuff like that. But and it's a very real possibility, but the people it's one of those the people don't want it to happen. They just want Cody versus Roman 2. And if you listen to the football show, they're going to be in Philly, and you know how Philly fans react to things.
Okay, so proposal. The Rock tries to get on stage and
Mm-hmm.
he's stopped. You suddenly hear a marching band playing, and out of the shadows steps a man, a barrel chested son of a gun, downing two beers and clad in the garish colors of the mummers. With a silly hat, out steps Jason motherfucking Kelsey.
That would be
Does he have a
phenomenal.
nickname? And he just beats the living beat Jesus out of Dwayne The Rock Johnson. And as a result, not only does Jason Kelsey earn immediate street cred with wrestling and immediately becomes truly solidifies his place as a Philadelphia sports legend, but also The Rock has his redemption moment. He falls from grace and has a chance to rebuild his brand through the meaty, beer swiggling fists of that's a word I made up.
Yep.
I meant to say swig and guzzling, and they just got smashed together.
Yes, they did.
Um, if the beer drinking fists of Jason Kelsey, his marble statue, his ivory tower crumbles, so it may be rebuilt in a new image.
That
So
would
that's
be
my.
phenomenal. First of all,
I'll work for WGA minimum.
but there has been football players that have helped out or interfered in the past.
Mhm.
Last year, when it was held in California, local local-ish to the area, but Super Bowl contender George Kittle showed up, which
Yeah, that
awesome,
tracks.
and clotheslined a guy to help out Pat McAfee. Which first off, George Kittle spent the first 5 minutes of one of his press conferences talking about how he wants Cody to face The Rock. Not The Rock, Cody to face Roman Reigns. Dude's a huge wrestling fan. But I wouldn't be surprised if Jason Kelsey shows up at Mania. I'm kind of
I
excited
sure.
about that.
And according to Pro Football Reference, he does not have any nicknames,
He
which
goes,
is
I mean, there's
wild.
Sexy
Pro
Batman.
Football always stupid. Yeah, well, they didn't feel comfortable listing.
Yeah. Anyway,
Um,
yeah, so there's a lot going on in the world today. let's get into what is WrestleMania.
Yeah.
So, first off, it is obviously the flagship show of the WWE. If there is one event that they're going to put thousands upon thousands of dollars in, it is going to be that.
Right. Is this the first one under new management, or have we had ones under new management already?
So, last year and the year before were kind of when Vince he was on the outs, but he wasn't formally out. So it's kind of like iffy. Um,
Mhm.
Last year specifically, because WrestleMania has divided into two nights, which we'll talk about later. Um, Triple H was it was like made apparent that Triple H ran the first night himself, which was a phenomenal night of wrestling. Everybody loved it. And then the second night, Vince was changing the script up until the start of the show on people and put it kind of just doled out very massively.
Right.
And so it's like all right, like there was like a very clear quality difference, and it wasn't the factor of just like Cody losing to Roman originally. It was just the match's quality felt poorer. It was not. It was just not as good.
Mhm.
So that's kind of like that weird, and like he Roman Reigns won with help of another person. Like he didn't even win cleanly. So it was just kind of like a and like people were like, all right, this is like, well, this isn't bad. It wasn't amazing. And there was also a couple other things that happened. That was the night that Shane McMahon tore his quad, trying to have like a P segment with the Miz, and that resulted into Snoop Dogg taking over. And
Let's just sure.
yeah,
Just all right then.
which was fantastic still. um,
Mhm.
Edge Edge fought against Finn Balor in a Hell in a Cell match, and it was brutal. It was good, but one of the things Balor got a huge gash in his forehead, and they did finish the match, but they had to take like a huge pause for like a couple of minutes trying to keep the story going while I patched him up vaguely before they just did things. And while it wasn't like it was still a pretty good match, that was definitely like a adrenaline stopper.
Right.
So it was just kind of like things kept happening to really just make that night kind of a dud. So this is like the first WrestleMania coming up where it is depending on how these rumors play out of the Rocks and TKO have huge influence. The Rock and TKO have no influence on what's going to happen. Everything's over Triple H's head, but the majority of this storytelling and stuff is leading to Triple H storylines, which is
Mhm.
nice. Obviously, he's had a couple of audibles because CM Punk got hurt, and he was going to be like a huge aspect of it. Uh,
Mm.
so it seems like that trajectory is swerving to Drew McIntyre a little bit, which is nice.
Right.
The tag team titles are going to be defended at the Elimination Chamber. I'm sure there's going to be some form of consequences. Gunther, the Intercontinental Champion for over 600 days. We're big Gunther fans here too. His plans kind of got skewed a little bit too, because originally the person he was going to, like, according to the rumor mills, his original opponent for this upcoming WrestleMania was Brock Lesnar, which is
Oh.
awesome. Well, it's not awesome now. It would have been awesome if that
Right.
happened.
It seemed like a much cooler idea a few weeks ago.
Yes, but with
Um,
everything happening and like pretty much the only thing keeping Brock Lesnar in the active roster stuff was Vince.
Mm.
and the copious amounts of money they would pay him for it.
Well, yeah.
Things would easily shell
Um,
out. It's kind of been put.
yeah. I guess it's interesting.
He got put on ice a little bit. They took him off
Yeah.
the upcoming video games poster
Right.
and the
Damn.
WrestleMania poster.
Michael Vick was he almost got his second Madden cover, and he went to jail for dogfighting.
Yeah.
Do you remember that whole saga where it
Uh,
was like, we're gonna let the fans vote, and Michael Vick made it to the semifinals with Hayden Hillis of all people,
yeah.
and I have to assume Madden was just like, no,
They gotta rig it.
nope.
They had to rig it. Yeah.
That's like, oh, look at all these extra votes. And it kind of ruined Hayden Hillis's career, which I kind of feel bad for.
Yeah.
Because then he started asking for a lot more money. It's a whole thing. Anyway, I guess
Huh.
I'm just curious because it's like, I assume they never, even way after the fact, don't do a lot of like inside baseball stuff where they talk about like the thought process behind their
Yeah.
creative decisions. Because I'd be so curious how they approach it. Because, like at the Ren Fair, you'll have people get injured every now and
Yeah.
then. Someone will have heat exhaustion. Someone will, like, Robin Hood had his head smacked open one time. Like, so you have to like improv and like,
Yeah.
you either have understudies or you think of a way around it. But like, you can't really do that with like very front-facing public individual. Like,
Yeah.
it's not they're characters, but they're people
Yeah.
at the same.
It's like when you play. It's like they're playing themselves, kind of. I mean,
Right.
a little bit more character-esque because it's wrestling and not like the NFL. But it's yeah. There's typically like they like to plan a conclusion first for or a lot of the old school promoters or old school style promoters come up with the conclusion first and then work their way to that conclusion. It's like, all right, we got to get here. How do we get here? We do one, two, three. How do we get to one? ABC. How do we get to two? ABC. How do we get to three? ABC. And so forth. That's kind of like that was the old school style. And then there was the end of Vince McMahon's like term where he would just kind of go, I like these two guys. We're going to make it happen whether they like it or not. I'm not wrong. The
Right.
people are wrong. And
Still true.
they still put on like some good matches and stuff over the years, but if you weren't one of his like top guys or one of his favorites wasn't in the match, you're going to probably get hit with a dud.
Right. I was gonna say it does feel like it's way more like
It's
I guess they spread the butter around a little bit. Like,
yes.
because as best I know old wrestling, it's like I can name like three or four people, and it seems like they were mostly doing all the work. Whereas
Yeah.
now I'm like, man, there's so many names to keep track of.
Oh yeah, when we talk about later in the series when we're talking about like individuals at WrestleMania, I'll talk about how Hulk Hogan main evented like 7 of the first 8 WrestleManias. He was like the final act. It wasn't exactly that stat, but that's kind of how it was pretty
Mm.
much.
Right, I get.
Um, like where it's just like it was it pretty much was when it was like WWE was the main promotion, which so from like the mid 2000s to late 2010s, it was the WWE in America was the top dog wrestling promotion. Everything else was kind of doing all right, if that. TNA kind of started off hot, but then dropped down in quality. And then Japan was doing great, but since the WWE never really acknowledged Japan and stuff, it was kind of like, they're across the Pacific. We're not worried about them as competition. Um,
Hmm.
and then once AEW started and became like a huge competitor, that's kind of like especially started by a bunch of notable wrestlers. That's when they had to like shift gears a little bit, and it was also coinciding with when Triple H got more power, as opposed to just being in charge of the developmental roster, which he would put on showcases for them, and they would be phenomenal matches. And his talent searches was like Vince McMahon picked up Hogan and Brutus the Barber Beefcake because he pretty much saw how big they were and was just like at matches, and he's like, yeah, I'm gonna make sure these guys wrestle for me. Triple H,
Right.
there's a lot more of a talent aspect. And something that AEW helped encourage was it was pretty much during that time where WWE was like Supreme King. You have your one versus one or tag team versus tag team matches, like rivalries.
Mhm.
AEW shows up, they start doing a lot more mixing and matching and like developing layers. There's multiple people that can go after like multiple people like for a whole spider web as opposed to a matching game. And now the WWE is kind of with Triple H is kind of catching up to that, which is nice. So there is rivalry number one, and then there's all these other stuff that they got going on.
Right, right.
Anyway,
Yeah, that makes.
yeah, one of the biggest game changers in the pro wrestling world was WrestleMania. So it was not the first like huge pay per view. It was actually created because of another pay per view and how good it was. Jim
Mm.
Crockett's NWA, which is the National Wrestling Alliance, they had a lot of territories throughout the U.S. during the pre WWE days. They would have all sorts of different areas, uh, Texas, Tennessee, Georgia, things like that. And they held an event called Starcade, which was like a huge success. So Vince behind the scenes was like, all right, I can do that too, and created WrestleMania as like the hot shit event.
Like Walter Disney responding to Fleischer Studios by being like, "Bet."
That's pretty much what happened. It was literally like I can do this bigger, better, and badder. So, in 1985, the first WrestleMania happened in Madison Square Garden, a huge venue.
All right, I do have a question. So I know Vince McMahon was wealthy before he started WWE. Where
Yes,
did he get his money from?
his father, who ran, so WWE was previously the WWF, and his
Mhm.
father ran the WWF first. So he was also like outside of the money, he was kind of handed down the
And his
promotion.
father, like that was his father's like
Um,
how his father became rich, or is he like an oil? Because I'm like, how do you get Madison Square Garden off the bat unless you have a lot of bribing money?
yeah, no, he was a boxing, wrestling concert promoter that just did really good. That's how he. That's pretty much how he worked. He built up his entire empire by doing that.
That's how he got to play Madison. His son got to open in Madison Square Garden with the Rats and the Pizza.
Yes, and then his
I know. Look,
yeah
I know it's like the iconic basketball locale, like it's the mecca of basketball and whatnot, and the
yeah.
Knicks are finally good. But like, God, I fucking hate that that thing destroyed. They destroyed Penn Station to put it there.
Yep.
Like Penn Station used to be awesome. It used to be this beautiful glass, like Art Deco, like pinnacle of American artistic like infrastructure, like achievement. It's the most important, one of the most important, like traveling hubs in the entire country, and they turned it into a ratty little den where all everything dies and smells. Like Christ, I sorry, the New York infrastructure is one of my real prickly pear moments.
Yeah. Apparently, we found a real trigger for you.
Yeah, it's Madison Square Garden in particular because there's no reason for it to be there. Move it up to like around Central Park and be a part of the museum district, or like there's 1,000 places you could put it. There's plenty of room in Queens. Like we don't need that many rich houses for ex mobsters to like hang out. Like fuck, man. Like it's stupid. It just makes the entire middle of the Manhattan unusable. Like people have to go to work, man. Like come the fuck on. What were they thinking? Like Jesus Christ, so help you God, if you need to go somewhere, like if you need to catch a train, like you're getting a late train at 7 on a weekday or a weekend in the winter, good fucking luck, hombre, because you're stuck. You're just elbowing people and getting people up in your grill, and the subway is packed with a bunch of New Jersey scumbags. It's tough. All right, I'm sorry. You
Carter
were
has
saying first WrestleMania.
yeah. So Carter has some opinions. So it was held in 1985.
Right.
I'm sorry. I
Like,
I just
fuck, God damn it, man. Like, why did they? Why? Fucking Moses, that piece of shit. Like he destroyed the Bronx too. Like
Mhm.
fucking modern engineering, modern infrastructure. Turned this whole city into a claptrap. Ah, fuck. For no, just out of spite. There were plenty of other ways you could have designed this, but Robert Moses had to be a fucking dick for no reason and be like, no, I'm just mowing down this beautiful 8th Avenue for no reason, just destroying this area, ruining the Bronx. Like, just a thousand other ways we could have done it. Like we're applauding this new, like, across the street there, across the avenue there's like the Amtrak part that's like actually nice and clean and glass, and I'm like, why are we applauding the band-aid on the fucking missing calf muscle that got chopped off by a bunch of rich assholes in the okay.
All right, down
Anyway,
boy.
the 80s,
Yeah.
coke was everywhere.
Yes, that
Vince
is
McMahon,
also true.
heir to a wrestling throne, was like, I'm going wrestle in New York.
I'm gonna build it better. Um, so they started with that, and obviously it got traction fast, especially because one of the original spots they were promoting it on, MTV, which is
Really?
yeah, which is why Cyndi Lauper showed up at the original WrestleMania.
Jesus, that's so funny.
Yeah. So, in the celebrity aspect, it feels like there should be all sorts of celebrity aspects. Also, part of the initial tag team that won the first main event of WrestleMania. It was so Paul Orndorff and Rowdy Roddy Piper lost in a tag team match to Hulk Hogan and Mr. T. If that is not the 80s right there, I don't know what is.
Sincerely, we will never have like it. That is a culmination of the 1980s.
It really is. But so they started with having celebrities, and they've had quite a variety of celebrities at different aspects. Sometimes they've had celebrity announcers, sometimes they've had hosts, sometimes they had people sneak in and do some things, and sometimes they've had matches. They've had people like Rob Gronkowski show up in a match and stuff. They've had the guys that host what is that, like, new the weekly weekend update on SNL? They were in a WrestleMania
uh,
match once.
oh, really? What
Snooki.
year?
Oh, I think uh, I'm trying to think. It was like 20 or late 30s. I think 38 maybe. Um, or 30.
1938?
No, WrestleMania
Oh,
38.
you mean the number of WrestleMania? I'm
Yeah,
like,
or
I
like
don't think
35
they
or
were worrying
something.
about this when we were trying to liberate Europe.
Yeah,
Oh, trying to think of who that would have been then.
it was
Huh.
Michael Che, and it was the guys that it's
Oh, it was
currently.
the current guys. Okay,
It was
because
the
I was
current
like, Norm
guys.
Macdonald at WrestleMania?
That would have been funny. Um,
Would have fit in.
yeah, Colin Jost and yeah, it was
Michael.
yeah,
Oh,
Michael Che. It was WrestleMania
okay, fine.
35 because Braun Strowman won that. It was in the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royale. But
Oh,
yeah, we'll talk about that a little bit more later in the series of like the gimmicks and stuff. But there was
right.
a lot
I
of
was gonna say,
yeah,
follow-up question. In terms of like structure, obviously there's always the title match. That's like the
yeah.
marquee event. But like, is there any consistency on what the other things are? Do they play it kind of fast and loose with like
It's
I mean, it's pay-per-view, so I assume they have to keep it relatively consistent to be like, this is what you're paying for.
yeah, it's fast and loose, but it's like it's structured. So like how how when we're talking football, I'm like they should schedule it like this, and that's kind of how they schedule it. Where that last match should be the best match of the entire night now weekend.
Mhm.
The first match is the one that grabs attention. If you're not last, you're first. You want that attention. Like you find out you're not going to be fighting in the main event, sure, whatever. You want that first match to get like
Right.
to get the crowd hyped, get the crowd started, and then throughout it, they'll it there will either be a semi-main event match, the match before it, or their new thing where it's like this pay-per-view has 3 main event matches. It's like that doesn't make sense. but it's
Right.
like what they'll do
That's not what made
is the match before the main event, if it is an absolute like it'll either be one of the biggest matches or one of the smallest matches. Because if it's one of the biggest matches, in between that and the main event, they'll put in like a 5-10 minute segment of just something to fill time so the in-house crowd can pee and stuff, and the like everyone can get cleared and calm down for a second for a main event, or they put in just a crap match just to kill time.
Mhm.
And like they'll have an impromptu moment and stuff like that. So that's kind of like the match structure of it. And then it's kind of like, and then the match after the opener, it's, I'm trying to, the best way to describe it is, it'll be like a little bit of a cool off match, but they don't
Mhm.
want you to completely chill out. It's so it could be like something,
Little time to get to the
yeah,
next.
something like kind of big, but nothing like enough to just like slow your roll, but not put you to sleep. So it's like it'll be like a tag team match or something like that where it's just something happens to
Mhm.
chill everyone out. And
Right.
like they'll toss in like the middle of the card some absolute banger, especially if it involves Gunther and like Gunther versus Sheamus and or Drew McIntyre happened like 8 or 9 times over the course of like the end ass half of 2022 and the beginning like half of 2023, and every single one of those matches was an absolute banger.
Right.
So
I guess I'm assuming not everyone gets to compete at WrestleMania, right?
correct.
Like they're not bringing in. So there's no like dummy. I'm trying to think of the right word, but there's no like loser fight. There's not like a, oh, we just have to place you somewhere. So like you're here. You're a tree.
every
You get
every
to play
once
a tree.
every once in a while that's kind of what it feels like they do, like they put in people or they put in things to make things like make some, if you're like a hot star and you don't have like a clear WrestleMania moment, they'll make you one at some capacity.
Mhm.
For example, The Miz was not in a WrestleMania match at all last year, but he was considered one of the hosts. So he's
Right.
introducing segments, doing some interviews. He's in the like in like that period of time where it's like, hey, let's put him in like so people can pee before the main event. It's like and cool off. Miz comes out, starts talking trash. Pat McAfee shows up one night, and him and like he hits him a couple times. George Kittle clotheslines him, and then it's just like people are like, fans are happy about it, but if you missed it, no one's gonna care. And then the following night,
Right.
it was pretty much the same thing, but with Snoop Dogg and Shane McMahon, which we'll have to track down. That might be the watch along after WrestleMania, after this recording tonight of
Right. Right.
those blunders. Um, so yeah, fun fact about WrestleMania: you have to bid on it like the Super Bowl. The WWE takes bids. So
So for, oh, that's interesting. I did not know that.
yeah,
How intense does it get? How many cities are competing?
it's never it's never always like clearly stated, but it'll be like it'll be your major cities, and it'll be like all right, who can accommodate a lot of fans and who can like what are these perks that we can offer with this stuff, and
Right.
it's almost always held in a football stadium of some kind or Madison Square Garden, some huge venue where and they just work out things that can happen.
Right.
Um,
But yeah, it's not as like public as like because fame, the Super Bowl, it's they always talk about like the three
yeah,
competitors or like the Olympics. The sort of sales pitch for every nation is
yeah.
very public.
Oh yeah. No, it's like it's kind of like that where, but it'll be like They WWE very rarely like outright says things on TV. It'll be like where it's like somebody will be like, "Ah, I think they should host a WrestleMania here," or they'll be like through the rumor mills, you'll see like, "All right, Philadelphia, Boston, and somewhere in Texas or Florida are considered finalists for this upcoming WrestleMania," and people are like, "Oh, nice."
Right.
They do try to
Is it ever
spread the
like
wealth a little bit and like not have venues back to back years, but it happens
right?
sometimes.
Does it ever become like sort of a selling point? Like, because a lot of with the Super Bowl, there's always a feeling of like if a team built a new stadium and it's in a warm weather location or has a dome, there's kind of a vibe of like, oh, we're going to try to get the Super Bowl there
Yeah, yeah,
because
that's
like we want
kind
to
of
show off this new thing that taxpayers paid for, even though the owners can fucking afford. Sorry, that's another one of my.
yeah, down boy.
I'm prickly today.
Yeah, like the last year's WrestleMania was held at SoFi. So like which is pretty new and stuff at the time, but everything got pushed back a year, like venue wise because of COVID. So it was supposed to be WrestleMania 38 originally. Um, was supposed to be held there, so things got pushed away. But that just kind of happened. But they do try to like prefer bigger stadiums or newerish stadiums. I don't know exactly how quickly, but they went to MetLife pretty quickly after that was formed.
Right.
But they try to keep things big.
That's
Ironically
understandable.
enough, before they started this 2 night format, WrestleMania 2 was held in 3 different locations. They tried to like
And not over 3 days, I assume, right?
no, it was like they were like
Huh.
we're gonna cast from so it was Uniondale, New York, Rosemont, Illinois, and L.A. And it was like you were kind of just thrown. They were trying to do something different and be like, all right, let's hold these and just you're gonna have 4 of the cards, you're gonna have 4 of the matches, and try to make things happen ish. And it worked out. Eh. Um, it still got traction, but there was like it was obviously testing something out that didn't end up well. No, notable moment about that is there was an NFL versus WWF over the top rope battle royale.
Jesus, the adjectives, man.
Yeah, it was like they really loved bringing in the fans and stuff, or not the fans, but like the NFL to try and keep things hot. Mr. T was in a boxing match with Rowdy Roddy Piper, and Hulk Hogan once again held it, uh, headlined it.
Naturally. So, what is the most obscure location that's ever hosted WrestleMania? Like, what is one that, like, skimming
Ooh.
through them hands out? Like, is there a Buffalo? Is there a Winnipeg? Is there
There was actually 2 WrestleManias that were held in Canada.
ooh,
It was they were WrestleMania 6 and WrestleMania 18 were held at the Sky Dome in Toronto. But over the last couple years, especially with how some of the last more recent premium live events have been held overseas or like
right.
other places, they've done Puerto Rico. In the last year alone, they've done Puerto Rico, England, Wales, and stuff. And now
Did
they have
they
planned.
end up doing the match in Saudi Arabia or did
Yep,
they cancel?
they did Saudi
Right.
Arabia. It's too much money worth it in the deal.
Wait, day.
But they'll at least never get WrestleMania.
Well, that's
Um,
well, I do feel better about that.
so it's like that. But the next premium live event is the Elimination Chamber held in Australia. It's going to be in Perth, I believe.
Ooh,
Which is going to be
black do.
later this month. Then the WrestleMania. So last year after WrestleMania, the pay per view after Backlash, um, due to the consequences, I say in parentheses, about it. They had like people do things, and then they followed up with a their Backlash was held in Puerto Rico.
Huh.
Um, and main event of that was, or sorry, pre-main. Where was it? Oh, it was actually in the middle of the card. Bad Bunny competed in a San Juan street fight against Damian Priest for 25 minutes, which celebrity matches are usually like under 7. They held that match for 25 minutes, and Bad Bunny looked amazing.
Right.
They had it
Shoot, I'm trying
had
to remember what that Spider-Man film
it
was supposed
had
to be in.
story it had solid storyline going through it. They had returns, they had different things. It was awesome. He's also another celebrity that's competed at WrestleMania.
What is the location that's had the most? Like, is there one where it's like, all right, if they
Yeah.
don't have anywhere or something happens to the actual location, it's gotta be so and so.
So there's only been the only location they've held it 3 times at, which is the most, is Madison Square Garden. They had
Yeah, that,
1, 10, and 20 there.
huh?
And then 30 they held in Louisiana, and 40s in Philly. Um,
Right.
it seems to go in a little bit of waves. So it'll be like, all right, like the first couple of years of WrestleMania, it was like they hit like your standard big cities.
Mm.
You're hitting New York, Detroit, LA, and just want to double check. They held back to back WrestleManias in Atlantic City for 4 and 5. And then the 90s WrestleMania venues, it was almost all of it, like from, was that the 8 through 15, give or take? I don't know. There's a lot of Roman numerals, and I'm not on my game. It was like a couple were held in like California slash, was that Carson, Vegas? Yeah, Vegas, and then the majority of the 90s decade was held in the Upper East Coast. And
Right.
then they start spreading out in the early 2000s, hitting Texas a couple times, Florida, still hitting New York and LA, but like they expanded to like Chicago, Canada, Detroit, Seattle, and now they're kind of moving a little bit more south with their choices a lot. They'll still hit some big venues up north, like MetLife, but it's like a lot of them will be in like Texas, Atlanta, um, Nolens. So it'll be interesting to
Right.
see where they go next because U.S. venues, because it brings in a lot of money to the city, just
Mm.
like Super Bowls, and it's typically like a week's worth of events too. Um, but there seems to be hints, especially with how Triple H has been running things, of us getting a broad WrestleMania again, because they have, yeah, the next premium live events in Australia, like I said, and then the ones following WrestleMania this year is going to be in France, and then they're having an entirely separate pay per view in Germany this year. So hints of a broadness are being pitched. Another,
Interesting.
yeah. So the so WrestleMania 3 held the biggest crowd in a U.S. stadium for quite a period of time. So WrestleMania 3 was in 88, and in Detroit, they had a stadium filled with 93,000 people.
Jesus, that's football stadium level.
Yeah, it like to say it was a packed house
Or
is
like
a
college
huge,
football stadium,
yeah.
I suppose.
a huge understatement. And it was held at the it was at the Pontiac Silverdome, not Detroit. Um, and it was it had one of the biggest moments of WrestleMania history, that infamous like wrestling moment of Hulk Hogan slamming Andre the Giant. And we'll talk a little bit.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
I know that one.
yeah. We'll talk about that a little bit more when we talk of like big matches and individuals later in the series.
Mm.
Some other fun things that the the longest WrestleMania was WrestleMania 35. They had 7.5 hours worth of matches.
Jesus.
Yeah, and that was in 2019. So that was including a pre-show that had like 4 matches, and then the regular card. I remember watching it, and it was the first time that the women main evented WrestleMania, and it didn't get as much hype as it rightfully deserved because it was being put on at like midnight.
Mm.
It was really at the end of the day, and people were just, and it was like after some other really good matches, and people were just beat.
Right.
Like, I don't, it sucked because it was really good, but like that's why it sucked, and it's just like you got put on last, which isn't bad, but there was so much that happened before that point that you were just tired. There were 16 matches fought over that period of time,
Right.
and it just took so long. And then the following year was 2020, and since it's early April, late March, it got hit with the COVID bug right away.
Right.
Um, which was a lot of things had to change. First off, it was held completely in house. They have the WWE Training Center in Florida, or our Performance Center in Orlando, and it was held behind closed doors, which is kind of all right. And because of COVID restrictions and things like that, they had they moved it to 2 nights
Mm.
because you can only have so many people on each night and stuff like that. But it's one of those things that it secretly struck gold because
I could believe that.
they kept with the 2 night thing because they realized from a watching standpoint they didn't lose too many um, viewers. They
Uh, it really is funny that the NBA and the WWE of all companies had these like meticulously thought out plans. Like we can still do this. We just have
yeah
to like map it out. We got to figure it out. Whereas the NFL just goes like, we're just barreling through it. We
yeah
don't care if the Broncos don't have an active quarterback. We're just gonna play this game.
yeah it was very that was a very weird WrestleMania because it was like there was no fans. Typically at WrestleMania, a lot of your bigger stars will have crazy elaborate entrances. Shawn Michaels, Triple H, and The Undertaker are three that have had some awesome looking entrances. Triple H has come out looking like the Terminator before. Shawn Michaels ziplined in before. There's been there's a lot of fanfare to things,
Right.
which is pretty cool. And then there was none of that. They had it was like a very silent WrestleMania, but they still put on some pretty killer matches. There was a bunch of championship matches. A lot of titles were held and retained. I weirdly enough, one of the weird moments was they had a triple threat ladder match for so like 3 people were competing for the tag team titles. I think because one of the main people of the tag team caught COVID, and couldn't compete, so they just did, what if we do only one person from each tag team fighting for both titles? So that was kind of like a little bit of a monkey wrench situation. And they capped it off with technically the Undertaker's final match of, well, night one was his final match of the WWE, where he competed in a cinematic match, which was against AJ Styles. And you'll probably recognize one of the um, memes that have come from that match. But it was like, it was clear they scripted things and they moved things around to make that happen, and they reshot things, but it was one of those things that looked insanely good. And because,
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
that meme is from
Uh,
it.
that's I did not think that was that new.
Yeah. Um so they had the opportunity, it felt like the rightful send off for the Undertaker, because not because it wasn't in front of fans, but because it wasn't like they didn't have to try too hard about it, or like to keep things real for the fans. They could act, they can script. And they did another one again in the following night for John Cena versus the Bray Wyatt, which had somewhat of a similar-ish feel of Bray Wyatt had this like paranormal esque thing going about him, and it was like, all right, like we can make this work, but they got to make a like a just a deep cut, real Deadpool esque breaking the fourth wall match, which was phenomenal. Um, yeah, so that swapping to two nights obviously stuck around, and honestly, I'm a big fan of it because they've retained a lot of viewership with the fact of they're not losing people because they're so tired and dead after 7 hours of wrestling. They still have energy, and it's like they, for one extra day, they get double the amount of ticket sales, they get double the amount of publicity and double the amount of revenue, and it's like, all right, bet this this is clearly a working out method, and the fans, they don't have to like, instead of doing one day with what I said 16 matches, they can do two with like 6 to 8 matches each day. You can, but you can also give them a lot more time to show up and handle things. You can give them more respect for the matches, and it works out. So
Right.
yeah, that's kind of like the history of WrestleMania locations, and like kind of like your more, I guess, behind the scenes aspects of them. Typically, every year they go all out and make crazy ass stages too. But I think entrances is another episode where we talk kind of like what happens and stuff a little bit more in
Right.
depth of like big moments as opposed to like your behind the scenes aspect. They are their WrestleMania also typically has huge returns, and it's great when it's a very well kept secret where they will bust somebody in. They'll fly them into like no name airports, bust them in blacked out window vans, and they get like they take like a privacy curtain covered back of a golf cart until they make it to the stage, so very little people can like know about it. When Cody Rhodes returned to the WWE, he kind of got that treatment, but he was also regarded as like, oh, he's definitely going to be there. But another group, the Hardy Boys, Jeff and Matt Hardy, they did it, and it was a complete surprise to everyone, and they built it up fantastically. So before we wind down and count down the hours to when the WrestleMania press conference are, Do you have any questions about behind the scenes or what's happening or anything like that?
I guess I would ask, what are your expectations for this press conference? What do you think, like, how much of the drama you've established do you think they'll litigate now or wait and let WrestleMania handle it?
Um, I think I think they're going to establish some form of big match. I'm not saying it's exactly Cody's match, but they're going to establish some big match. And based off of his track records of post pay-per-views, press conferences, Triple H is going to get real about things, and he's going to legitimately talk numbers and statistics, planning processes, things like that. But
Hmm,
so I think those are things that are going to happen, and people are going to, because it appears that they haven't really they let some reporters that have enough, like they're not letting just Joey off the street reporter ask like some of the harder questions. Typically those
right.
reporters are for like Sports Illustrated or like big wrestling websites and stuff like that, and are pretty well known in the community. But they let them ask like, "What's your thoughts on other promotion doing this? What's your thoughts on this? Like, what's your thoughts on this Vince scandal and stuff?" So that's kind of interesting. That'll be interesting to see who gets a take, and if there's any sort of football appearance because it's right before Super Bowl held in Vegas, at Vegas. So I'm curious to see if we get like a George Kittle or Travis Kelsey moment, like, because that'd be kind of funny if they had like a whole boxing match moment. You know, when they do the weigh-ins and they held hold each other at
Oh yeah.
fist. They're elite level tight ends. They're enough levels of a goober to actually want that to happen. But yeah,
Yeah, I'm excited. I don't know. It's interesting to get a better sense of the history and like
yeah,
honestly, I didn't even know it was the 40th. So thinking about like we're at an anniversary year is pretty huge.
yeah. So obviously some bigger things are going to happen with that too. But we'll talk. So like a little bit of inside baseball. Next week we're going to be talking about the elimination chamber, like beforehand, and then the following week it's going to be the results, just like it was for the Royal Rumble. And then we're at this stretch of a couple of episodes where it is in between the last pay per view and in WrestleMania. So we're gonna have time to really get into some bigger lore aspects of some of the WrestleMania's biggest stars, some of the biggest matches, some of the gimmicks, some of the Hall of Fame moments, huge moments, things like that.
Hmm,
So we're
sounds
gonna,
good to me.
yeah, we're gonna like it's like here's a tease of some of the WrestleMania deep lore, and I felt like the behind the scenes was fun, and then after Elimination Chamber, when we're on that stretch of 5 or 6 weeks between premium live events, we're gonna be hitting you with lots of WrestleMania lore.
Hell yeah, brother.
Alrighty. So until next time, when who knows how many people we'll have on this show. Mm. Listen to Kevin and Carter talk football. It's ending soon.
Yes, we are on the Super Bowl week, baby. Let's go.
Yeah. And we got other things going on too, and other things in the works. So until
Wait
then,
till I host another series.
yeah.
Just you wait.
Broadway, baby. We're going to Broadway.